Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Pajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Pajajana Ranjana. Yamunatira Vanachari. Yamunatira Vanachari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Mr. Pad Paramahamsa Parujikacharya Ashtokarita Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parujikacharya Ashtokarita Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavindra ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad-gita ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda ki Jai. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Okay, I have the one book that has a different page number on it. We are in text 12, I believe, isn't it? Yeah. Do you know? You may know.
Oh, I think it is 11.
11, you sure?
Yes, Prabhu. We covered 9 and 10 last class.
11 for sure. Okay. I don't know what page it's on. What page is it on?
48.
What is it?
48, 148.
148. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On the 6th day of April 2022 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad-gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We are in chapter 3 entitled Karma Yoga. text number 11 on page 148 of your books. Devan bhavayatanena te deva bhavayantu vaha parasparam bhavayantah shreyak paramavapsyatha. Devan bhavayatanena te deva bhavayantu vaha parasparam bhavayantah shreyak paramavapsyatha. Devan bhavayatanena te deva bhavayantu vaha parasparam bhavayantah shreyak paramavapsyatha. Devan bhavayatanena te deva bhavayantu vaha parasparam bhavayantah shreyak paramavapsyatha. Devan bhavayatanena te deva bhavayantu vaha parasparam bhavayantah shreyak paramavapsyatha. Devan bhavayatanena te deva bhavayantu vaha parasparam bhavayantah shreyak paramavapsyatha. Devan, demigods, bhavayata, having pleased, anena, by this sacrifice, te, those, devaha, demigods, bhavayantu, will please, vaha, you, parasparam, mutually, bhavayantaha, pleasing one another, shreyaha, benediction, param, the supreme, avapsyata, you will achieve. Time out. Sorry. Okay. Translation. The demigods, being pleased by sacrifices, will also please you, and thus, by cooperation between men and demigods, prosperity will reign for all. Purport. The demigods are empowered administrators of material affairs. The supply of air, light, water, and all other benedictions for maintaining the body and soul of every living entity is entrusted to the demigods, who are innumerable assistants in different parts of the body of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Their pleasures and displeasures are dependent on the performance of yajnas by the human being. Some of the yajnas are meant to satisfy particular demigods, but even in so doing, Lord Vishnu is worshipped in all yajnas as the chief beneficiary. It is stated also in the Bhagavad-gita that Krishna himself is the beneficiary of all kinds of yajnas, bhoktarang yajnatapasam. Therefore, ultimate satisfaction of the yajnapati is the chief purpose of all yajnas. When these yajnas are perfectly performed, naturally the demigods in charge of the different departments of supply are pleased, and there is no scarcity in the supply of natural products. Performance of yajnas has many side effects, ultimately leading to liberation from material bondage. By performance of yajnas, all activities become purified, as it is stated in the Vedas. Ahara shuddhau sattva shuddhi, sattva shuddhau duva smriti, smriti lambhe sarvagantinam, vipramokshaha. By performance of yajna, one's eatables become sanctified, and by eating sanctified foodstuffs, one's very existence becomes purified. By the purification of existence, finer tissues in the memory become sanctified, and when memory is sanctified, one can think of the path of liberation, and all these combined together lead to Krishna consciousness, the great necessity of present-day society. Om jnana-timirandasya jnanandana shalakaya chakshu unmiditam mena tasmai shri gurave namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance to him and all members of Sri Parampara. So one may ask, well, what do we have to worry about the demigods? Because there are so many places Krishna says you don't have to worship the demigods. So what I think of here is that the parts of the Vedas in which the demigod worship is recommended, as Prabhupada says here, there's also included Vishnu worship in there. And so if one is nicely worshiping the demigods, he's going to come across Vishnu worship as well, and there'll be purification. And especially you find in the 4th canto, I believe it is, Yata Taro Mula Nishet Charena, Triptam Titatskanda Buddho Pashaka, Prana Pahara Chayatendriyanam, Tataiva Sarvahanam Achyuteja. Achyuta Ija means worshipping Achyuta, it's the name for Krishna. So this is the famous verse that describes 2 analogies for how serving Krishna, by serving Krishna, everything is taken care of. Just as by watering the root of a tree, you feed all the branches and the twigs and the fruits and the flowers in the tree. You don't have to go and water them separately. And if you try, you just make a mess. The tree will die. Similarly, by feeding the stomach, all of the senses are nourished. When the senses try to enjoy separately, they starve. They have to give to the stomach. Similarly, if you worship Achyuta nicely, all the demigods will be satisfied. You don't have to worry about worshiping them separately. One example, Yudhishthira's reign describes. He was performing regular sacrifice, regular worship of Krishna, and everything was coming just right. The cows were so happy that they were pouring milk on the fields. The rain was coming at the right time. At night. It would rain at night, so it wouldn't inconvenience, and just the right amount. In other words, all the demigods were cooperating very nicely, and there was prosperity for all. And it was a very nicely run kingdom. So this is simply illustrating how the universe is working, because people today, they have no idea that we're dependent not just on the sun and the air and all this, but we're dependent on the sun god and the air god, and there's conscious living beings behind everything. Everything that we describe, what is that verse? I forget, in the Sanskrit, in the Bhagavad-gita, that the whole material world is simply a combination of the souls and matter. And that goes for things that we see that don't even seem to be alive. The earth. Is a boulder alive? No, a boulder's not alive. But there's Bhumi. There's a goddess behind the earth. There's a god behind the air. Air is not alive in and of itself. It's kind of like the external body. Our bodies are not living independently of us being here. As soon as we leave, the body reverts to its earth, water, fire, everything. So in a sense, the entire universe, and this is in Prabhupada's books, is the external body of Krishna. It's matter, but there's a soul there behind it. There's the consciousness behind it. This is the great fallacy of modern science, is to depersonalize everything. And because they can't see the soul, they can't weigh the soul doesn't exist. What to speak of God? God is an outmoded, in many circles, things an outmoded conception. But they're just ensuring disaster for their own lives and for those who listen to them. There is consciousness in every atom. Super soul is there. How is the world being sustained? Not automatically, by chance. Or the planets are floating, we're breathing, all of these incredibly complicated organisms, of which the human body is one, are working because there's a higher intelligence that has created it and is also with it as the super soul, observing and giving us impetus to how to act. So the demigods are like the bureaucracy of Krishna. He has all of these expansions, not just the demigods, but also the Purusha avatars and other, so that he can simply spend his time, focus on what's really important, which is the play, the lila going on in Goloka Vrindavan. It's just like if someone is a very wealthy industrialist, he doesn't have to be at the factory all the time. He's got agents to do that. So he can be at his retreat or his farm, whatever, enjoy. So these demigods, they're part and parcel of Krishna. And we recognize them. We don't insult the demigods, but we don't worship them. That was what the whole Govardhan Puja was about. Govardhan Leela. Is that Vaishnavas, pure Vaishnavas, certainly don't need to worship anyone else beside Krishna. And shouldn't. And what is the first offense to the holy name? To think that I'm sorry, not the first offense, the second offense. To think that the holy name or the name of demigods such as Brahma and Shiva are equal to or independent of the holy name of Lord Krishna. Now it's interesting that it was equal to or independent of. There's a phrase in that Sanskrit, Diya Binnam, referring to the names of the gods such as Shiva versus the name of Krishna. So this is one of those cases where, the Sandhi rules, Sandhi is where two words meet, gives you two meanings, possible meanings. You don't know where it divides. Diya Binnam. If it's two words, Diya and Binnam, it means thinking they're separate. If it's Diya Abhinnam, it's thinking that they're equal, they're the same. So the names of the gods, or the gods themselves, are not separate in the sense that whatever they can give you is they're doing it because Krishna gave them the opportunity to do it. They're not independent of Krishna. It's not that, because, you probably see temples. I remember when I used to go to Winnipeg, we used to visit one temple, the Hindu temple, and they had all the gods, You've seen that. There's Durga and Shiva, and of course they have Lakshmi and Narayan, and there's Ganesh, of course, and there's Radha and Krishna, and there's this and that. Just to cover all the bases. That's not Krishna Bhakti. That's that's Diya Binnam, thinking that they're separate. So one should not think that the demigods are separate from Krishna because they're dependent on Krishna. They're more powerful living entities than we are. And they've been given great positions of responsibility. That's all. But they're also mortal, and they're also living entities. Shiva is a special case, But so we don't have to think that we have to worship the demigods by these verses here, and the sacrifice and the offering, we already have so much experience. Our sacrifice is Sankirtan Yajna. That's sufficient. And our offering is to Krishna. We make the offerings to Krishna of the food and whatever else we have that's valuable, we offer it to Krishna, and it's all taken care of. And prosperity will reign. Okay, any questions on this? Okay, right behind you.
Hare Krishna. So in the last few words of this
purport.
This purport. No, of the verse, Shreya Param Avapsyatha. So in the translation, like the word for word translation, it says you will achieve the supreme benediction. And then like in the translation below that, it says prosperity will reign for all.
Yeah.
But so like the meaning completely changes between the two things.
You mean making it prosperity rather than the supreme benediction?
Yeah.
What's the supreme benediction? You go back to Godhead.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
So
well, that's not going to happen by wishing the demigods. I think what Krishna's doing here, he's kind of dialing back the language. So this is like, for someone who's a demigod worshiper, the supreme benediction is prosperity. All the needs will be met. And that's what he's saying. And the next verse, is defining what that supreme, that so-called supreme benediction is. I'd have to look at the commentary, but I'll try to look at it if you remind me. How Baladev Vijibhushan deals with that. Yeah, go ahead.
Hello. I don't know if I heard this in the movement or if this was coming from outside somewhere. Just as we ascend through the different lower species, like animals,
Descend, yeah.
descend.
Yeah, we did. Well, from human life, we descend to the lower species. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, we also we go through.
We ascend from.
Right.
Yeah, we ascend through them, sure.
Okay, so the demigods, do we eventually become demigods before or just in our general journey?
You can if you want to.
You can.
Do you aspire to become a demigod? I mean, it describes how, what was really fascinating when the 9th canto came out. By the way, welcome. Hare Krishna. What page are we on? My book is different. What is it? 148. Yeah. When the first birth we take, when we fall from the spiritual world, is Lord Brahma, which is pretty far out. And Lord Brahma rules over a universe, so a very long, long lifetime. But not every Brahma goes back to Godhead, obviously. Here we are. What happened? In other words, Brahma can also become affected by all of the work that he does in creation and things like that, and become attracted and go down. Obviously, here we are. We're not Brahma. You're not going to live 311 trillion years, are you? So it goes both ways. We can devolve. I mean, we know that we can devolve from the human form. You can make a great sinful activity. You can use the human form of life. We just read in the 2nd chapter, Nehabakamanashati Pratyavayana Vidyate, that in this practice of Krishna consciousness, there's no loss and diminution. And even a little advancement protects you from the most fearful type of danger, which is losing the human form of life. It's not a given that we're going to be reborn as human beings. So it depends on our work, it depends on our consciousness. So it can go both ways. You can go up and become a demigod, or you can go down and become a cat and a dog. Depends on what you do now. Or you can go back to Godhead. It's best not to take any chances, because even as a demigod, you can come back down. So there's no position in the material world that we should aspire for. We should aspire for returning home back to Godhead. Okay? Yeah. All right, let's go on. Text 12. I don't have the page number, but you're on page 148? And now 149. Page 149. Ishtan Bhogan Hivo Deva Dasyante Yagya Bhavita Bhavitaha Tayadattana Pradayabhyo Yo Bhunkte Stena Eva Saha. In charge of the various necessities of life, the demigods, being satisfied by the performance of yajna or sacrifice, will supply all necessities to you. But he who enjoys such gifts without offering them to the demigods in return is certainly a thief. Purport. The demigods are authorized supplying agents on behalf of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu. Therefore, they must be satisfied by the performance of prescribed yajnas. In the Vedas, there are different kinds of yajnas prescribed for different kinds of demigods, but all are ultimately offered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. For one who cannot understand what the Personality of Godhead is, sacrifice to the demigods is recommended. According to the different material qualities of the persons concerned, different types of yajnas are recommended in the Vedas. Worship of different demigods is also on the same basis, namely according to different qualities. For example, the meat-eaters are recommended to worship the goddess Kali, the ghastly form of material nature. And before the goddess, the sacrifice of animals is recommended. But for those who are in the mode of goodness, the transcendental worship of Vishnu is recommended. But ultimately, all yajnas are meant for gradual promotion to the transcendental position. For ordinary men, at least 5 yajnas, known as Pancha Mahayajna, are necessary. One should know, however, that all the necessities of life that the human society requires are supplied by the demigod agents of the Lord. No one can manufacture anything. Take, for example, all the eatables of human society. These eatables include grains, fruits, vegetables, milk, sugar, etc., for the persons in the mode of goodness, and also eatables for the non-vegetarians, like meats, none of which can be manufactured by men. Then again, take, for example, heat, light, water, air, etc., which are also necessities of life. None of them can be manufactured by the human society. Without the Supreme Lord, there can be no profuse sunlight, moonlight, rainfall, breeze, etc., without which no one can live. Sorry. Okay. Obviously, our life is dependent on supplies from the Lord. Even for our manufacturing enterprises, we require so many raw materials like metal, sulfur, mercury, manganese, and so many essentials, all of which are supplied by the agents of the Lord, with the purpose that we should make proper use of them to keep ourselves fit and healthy for the purpose of self-realization, leading to the ultimate goal of life, namely liberation from the material struggle for existence. This aim of life is attained by performance of yajnas. If we forget the purpose of human life and simply take supplies from the agents of the Lord for sense gratification and become more and more entangled in material existence, which is not the purpose of creation, certainly we become thieves, and therefore we are punished by the laws of material nature. A society of thieves can never be happy because they have no aim in life. The gross materialist thieves have no ultimate goal of life. They are simply directed to sense gratification, nor do they have knowledge of how to perform yajnas. Lord Caitanya, however, inaugurated the easiest performance of yajna, namely the Sankirtan yajna, which can be performed by anyone in the world who accepts the principles of Krishna consciousness. So, Prabhupada brings it all back home in the end. So this material world is a very complicated way, maintenance. There's a, as I mentioned, a bureaucracy, big bureaucracy, which we don't see, but we see the result. This whole business of climate change, I'm sure all of you are aware of that phrase. And if you look at it, you see how there's these delicate balances are being disrupted. The Arctic and the Antarctic are getting warm at a quite a rapid pace, and big glaciers are breaking off the Antarctic. There's recently one that came, and that can result. This is fresh water. It can raise the sea. We should be concerned about that, right? The sea level raising. So how does this happen? Because of the artificial society that we've created. Burning, all of the cars going everywhere, gasoline, everything happening, and raising the average temperature and the content of the carbon dioxide in the world, in the atmosphere, so that the sun can't get reflected. The whole art. So the temperature's rising, and all of the pollutants. That we have plastics, little microplastics in our body. Have you read about that? From all these years of plastic, and the oceans. Poor fish, they eat something, it turns out to be plastic. Why is that? Because the whole world practically is simply focused on how can we increase our sense gratification. The purpose of life has been lost, the purpose of human life. And unless you have some idea about what the purpose of life is, then you're going to default to what seems like the obvious purpose of life, which is to enjoy life. Enjoy the senses, enjoy the mind, get as much as you can for yourself, or at least for my family, all these different things. And you make alliances with others on the basis of where you're born, what your color is, what language you speak. Isn't it? This is all of that is artificial. I mean, the first lesson, what we learned in chapter 2, is that we're not the body. We're spirit soul. We're pure spirit. And then that seminal verse for human life to understanding, Najayate mriyate vakadachan nayam budva bhavitava nabuya. For the soul, the self, the real you, there's no birth and there's no death. We're as eternal as Krishna. We've lived countless lives before, all of which we've forgotten. I assume none of you can remember. And we certainly don't know what the future is. But we have future lives and we have past lives. So the question is now, we experience directly what these problems of being embodied are, the soul within the body. Original life, according to Krishna, according to the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our other Shastra, main Shastra, is that originally the soul is in a world of spirit. Nothing dies, nothing changes there. So what's going on? Leela, play. I mean, even as a child, didn't you want to play all day? But your mother said, no, you have to come home, you get tired, and then you have to go to school. What a traumatic thing that was, first day in school. You mean I can't play? No, because this world is a world of competition, you know, and the necessities of life don't just come to you. You have to work for them. In other words, it's all artificial. This is not our home. This is not anyone's home. No living entity belongs here. It's a place of punishment. It's a place of reform. So what is it that we need to reform? Our consciousness. Consciousness is key. What your ideas are, what your desires are, everything that makes up consciousness. That's the symptom of the soul. And if that's simply absorbed in matter, absorbed in getting and spending and trying to enjoy these external senses, which are very temporary, how long can you enjoy? Even as a young person, you can't enjoy constantly, you know. And then at a certain point, you get older, you can't, you know. And then death is coming. Oh my God. You mean now it's all going to be over? Terrifying. So this is a word, as Krishna, he certifies, dukkhaliyam ashashvatam. It's a world of suffering, and it's temporary. Even he said, that's okay, I can take it. No, your situation is temporary. You're going to be ripped out and who knows where you're going. So Krishna consciousness is a science of training your mind, training your consciousness, so that at the end of life, you don't have to come back again into a gross material body and suffer old age, disease, and death once again for the umpteenth time. That's the basic principle of all Vedic culture. But with our present senses, we can't see the soul, we can't see God, and we can create a philosophy that there's no God. You guys are just crazy. Let's go to the bar. That's where the action is. You know what I'm saying? So the wonderful thing about Krishna conscious movement that Lord Caitanya started is that if you just take up the process, even as an experiment, you know, you're going to feel lighter. You're going to feel the benefits of chanting the holy name, this mantra, the sound. This is something that West doesn't know. That different mantras have different effects. The sound, even today, it's proven. Prabhupada, I heard Prabhupada in a lecture talking about how I think near our place in Mayapur, there was a fellow who happened to be a Muslim who had perfected the art of chanting mantras for pacifying snakes. Yes, so that isn't it? And even counteracting the poison if you're bitten by a snake. See, he's seen it directly. That's unknown in the West. The power of mantra chanting. And so that's a fine art. And this mantra is spoken of in the Upanishads as the best mantra for counteracting the ills of Kali Yuga. In his famous.
They can even talk to snakes, like remotely. They know that which snake bite and where it is now.
Really?
Yeah, just by seeing the wounds and
Oh, no kidding. See, he knows from direct experience.
I experienced because I have
You had a snake bite.
went to
And you see, he's pretty healthy now.
the twice, yeah.
Twice, huh? Yeah. So what does it say in the Upanishads? It says, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Iti Shodashakam Nam Kali Kalmasha Nashanam Natak Parataropaya Sarva Vedeshu Drishyate. These 16 names, there's 16 names up there. Iti Shodashakam Kali Kalmasha Nashanam. So this Kali Yuga is full of kalmasha, means the ills and evils, and the very name of the age means fighting all the time. Did you notice? There's a war going on in Europe. And there have been wars, little ones going on for the last 100 years, everywhere. Families are fighting, guys are fighting, you know, all this is going on. So this is the Kali Yuga. It's certainly not the best yuga for meditation and other spiritual practices. But in this age, there's no better way of counteracting the ills of this Kali Yuga than chanting these 16 names. And this is the very mantra that Lord Caitanya used emphasized in his Sankirtan. He was chanting it. Haridas Thakur was chanting it. All the devotees were chanting it, and it's been brought to us. So this is the one benediction. What is that? Hare Nama Eva Kevalam. We're talking about yajna. This is Sankirtan yajna. Kalo nastyeva, nastyeva, nastyeva gatadanya. Nasti means there is no other. And kalo means in the Kali age, Kali Yuga, where we are. It says, if you want to achieve the supreme goal of life, in this age, when dissension and chaos abound, there is no other way, there is no other way, there is no other way that can never be found but to chant Krishna's name, but to chant Krishna's name, but to chant Krishna's name with a stout-hearted vow, and to pray, O Lord Krishna, O friend of the poor, that my head ever unto your lotus feet bow. So this is the jagya that ultimately this comes to. But in the process of doing that, we need training in a lifestyle which is centered on this jagya, and which allows us to purify our life, to raise ourselves from the mode of good, ignorance to passion, passion to goodness, goodness to pure goodness. And that's what the whole process of devotional service, the discipline of devotional service is, of bhakti. So here, this he's simply explaining the universal order to us. Is that we're not independent. We're not just, oh yes, we're going to conquer nature. You're never going to conquer nature. Nature always wins in the end. You always die, and then if you don't follow the rules that are given in the Shastra, you're going to cause imbalances in the society and in the air and the water. And ultimately, it's going to become hellish. So this living simply, simple living, high thinking, if one can tap into the reservoir of pleasure in your heart, you won't have to try to get more and more extreme pleasures outside and become dissatisfied. You can be happy no matter where you are. And we've seen that with Srila Prabhupada, with the six Goswamis, all the great devotees. Very simple, austere lives, sannyasis and the Goswamis. But they're chanting, and they're remembering Krishna, they're serving Krishna, and they're completely satisfied. That's where your satisfaction comes from. And it's the whole if a society is built on that, it can be very peaceful and happy. And not create all this dissension and war and craziness. Because we're all brothers and sisters, if you will. We're all sons of Krishna. And these externals, the language and the coloring and all that craziness, that's just Maya's trick to make us, all this dissension. We're all together. This is real United Nations. Have you been to Mayapur Festival? It's incredible. You've got the Russians there, and you got the Chinese over there, and there's not that many Americans these days, comparatively speaking. But there's all different kinds of, and everyone's chanting Hare Krishna together. There's no, dissension. But if everyone is trying to get this land and this resource, and that's madness. All right, text 13. Please. Where's the other mic? Yeah, here. Dormant.
So there are yajna, I have a confusion about, there are yajna which we do, like create a sacrificial arena, and traditionally
You mean like for initiations? Fire yajna?
Yeah, fire yajna, that's one of the understanding about yajna, right?
Yeah.
There is other understanding we learn from Prabhupada is about Lord Chaitanya's Kirtan yajna, which is ultimately gives one liberation from the material bondage, right? So, how these two yajna are, how it works, right? In that yajna, people get material prosperity, like in the sacrificial fire, they please the demigod and get the out results, right?
Yeah, but we don't perform those kind of fire yajnas. I mean, the fire yajnas we have for. Do you take a little book and give it from outside? Yeah. You have the book ready? You have some literature? No. Go outside and on the in the patio or in the lobby. There's something you can get there. So what I'm getting is you're talking about the two kind of sacrifices we do,
which is recommended in Vedas. Like one is about Vedic sacrifice, which Shiva sacrifice, Indra sacrifice, Brahma, everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody receives their oblations. They are entitled to, right?
You mean like the gods? They get
demigods, right?
Yeah.
So ultimately they give us some results. The performer gets some benefits,
Right.
which is across all the ages, and they elevate themselves to the different,
You can,
stages.
yeah.
So, what is the ultimate purpose? Like this yajna, that yajna, how they receive?
Why is it described in the Vedas?
Yeah, how it is different and
Well,
why it is.
this comes up in the beginning of the Bhagavatam, when you read about how Vyasadeva was dissatisfied. He'd written all the Puranas, he'd written all the Vedas, he'd written the Mahabharata, and everything. He says, why am I dissatisfied? And Narada Muni, his spiritual master, comes and kind of chastises him. So do you think that the mind and body are the proper objects of self-realization? Is that what your point is? In other words, he kind of hedged his bets. What Vyasadeva was giving, well, people aren't ready for pure bhakti, which is based on renunciation and everything. They're involved in trying to live in the world. So I'll give him the sacrifices that are age-old sacrifices, but at the same time there'll be some worship of Vishnu in there, and that'll give them some gradual way to be elevated, eventually. But it's not suited, especially for Kali Yuga, because what'll happen is they'll take advantage of the concessions for sense gratification, and they'll forget all about the restrictions, and that's what happened. And that's why Buddha came, because they were using certain passages in the Vedas as an excuse for cow slaughter and all this stuff. So this is why Vedavyas was unsatisfied, because what he had written was not suitable to really save the residents of the coming Kali Yuga. And so eventually, of course, he wrote the Bhagavatam, wholly and solely about the worship of Lord Vishnu. And which ultimately we see even in the Bhagavad-gita, Krishna says, don't worship the demigods. You don't have to, just worship me. What is it? Yanti deva vata devan. Whatever you worship, you go there. But going to Pitri-loka, going to Indra-loka, is not going to help you. You'll come down again, and you'll be in the middle of Kali Yuga again, or worse. So the idea behind that. Now, I'm a little confused, because you mentioned the fire sacrifice we may do. Well, that's just an example. But that's just part of the whole system of initiation, where you understand, I'm taking a vow before the fire, before the deities, before the devotees, before the spiritual master. The whole idea is to try to confirm you and give you more determination in your process of devotional service. And all the initiates, they'll explain. I remember when I was initiated, I felt, well, that was great. Now I'm more confirmed. You felt more, well, how should I say, sure about your sadhana, that you have a better chance to actually progress in devotional service. But it's not like all the other chanting was useless. I was not a year, almost a year before I was first initiated. But so there are certain rituals and things, just like on the altar. There's so many mantras you chant and things that you do as part of the deity worship given by Narada and Narada Pancharatra. But the goal is ultimately one, which is to focus your attention on the deity, make you very regulated, and see the deity as your worshipable Lord and one who you want to please and serve. And that complements the chanting of the holy name. The holy name can alone take you back to Godhead, but the fact is that we're not so advanced that we can just chant. There's so many things going on. We need temples, we need association, we need deities and festivals and all these other things, which can absorb our mind and senses. So, but we have to make. This is why the guidance is so important. Which of the subsidiary sacrifices do we really do, which fits into the whole program? And so that's why we have Hari Bhakti Vilas, especially for householders. There's so many things to do, different samskars and so forth that are part of the whole program of bhakti. But the center is always the chanting of the holy name. And we should never lose sight of the purpose. Anya bilashita shunyam. We want to purify our heart of all desires ultimately, except pure service to Krishna favorably.
So just to clarify, so there are yagyas which happen where you recite hymns from the Veda.
Uh-huh.
So some of them, like not all of them are directed towards demigods, or like, so can a yagya also help you elevate your consciousness, or is it just for material, like?
Well, let's again come back to the Sankirtan Jagya is also a Jagya.
And I mean like the fire one, like where you're
Fire
sitting
yajnas.
around a fire, you're
Yeah,
chanting.
I've been in fire jagyas where what's going on with the sound
Yeah.
is the thousand names of
Same.
Vishnu.
Yeah.
I did that a couple of times, sometimes devotees like to chant when the 1,000 names of Lord Chaitanya, but there's that. So the thing is, we shouldn't lose the thread. I'll tell you a story. In this very temple, I've been here a long time, since '89, and the Shiva Ratri. We had a larger Indian community participating at that time, and Shiva Ratri was a big deal. And so I used to do the evening arti, the Sandhya arti, and I'm doing the Sandhya arti on Shiva Ratri, and there's a lot of people in the audience, and they've got the Shiva Linga up there near the fountain, and they're making offerings to the Shiva Linga directly. I said, this doesn't sound right. This is not. The actual. I wasn't positive, but what I understood, and I was right, is that Shiva Linga can be there, but it's supposed to get prasadam, after you offer on the altar to Krishna. And there was a devotee here, I won't name his name, but he was all dressed up as Durvasa Muni. And he was chanting all kinds of things to the Shiva Linga. I was offering, arti. I said, well, I can't do anything now, I'm on the altar. But I said that next time it comes around, next year I'll conduct, And we chanted the song of Shiva in the 4th canto. Just to reiterate, Lord Shiva is the greatest Vaishnava. He's known as the Vaishnavanam Yatashambhu. And so the song of Shiva is a song to Krishna. Shiva is singing this. And I later discovered that Lord Chaitanya, when he went to South India, there are a lot of Shiva temples there, and he would go to them, and he would offer prayers. What kind of prayers did he offer? Murari Gupta, I think it's Murari Gupta who wrote this book, Chaitanya Charita. And they give some of the prayers. He says, oh, please give me a bhakti to Govinda. You're always chanting Govinda's name, now please give me. He's showing how, by his example, one can pray to the demigods for better bhakti, just like the gopis prayed to Caitanya to Krishna's husband. So you have to do it carefully, because if you're just going to say, okay, now we're going to do this fire yajna for this and that and some material purpose, you've lost the thread. We're not supposed to approach the demigods for anything material. We can approach them, and like Lord Shiva. Oh, wonderful! Let me learn this prayer, which I started learning. Song of Shiva. So otherwise, we'll lose our way in bhakti.
So my follow-up question to this is like, in the Vaishnav tradition, where are the scriptures where you can find like how you're supposed to worship on Shivratri, and how, like, for example, Ram Navami is coming, so like, do you worship like
No,
Lord
Ram is the avatar of Krishna. Come on, what are you kidding?
Like, do you worship Lord Ram in his like actual form, or do you worship like in the temple?
No, we have in India, almost Jew temple has Ram Lakshmana.
Yes, we have deities on the altar.
Yeah.
A lot of temples.
Yes, and
Washington
for-
D.C. I believe. No, the Ram Leela is in the Bhagavatam, 9th canto. So that's fine. No, the danger is that you get absorbed in worshiping some demigod for material purpose. So if you want to worship a demigod, fine, but worship it for a spiritual purpose, like the gopis did, or sing the song of Lord Shiva, or chant Lord Chaitanya's prayer to Shiva. It generally doesn't come up in ISKCON. It's all Krishna worship, and of course Jagannath, and so Vishnu Tattva, and not for anything material. We're worshiping. I'll end with this prayer because it's getting late. Here's just one of many kind of beautiful shlokas, just like Queen Kunti or Bhishma Dev, right in the Bhagavatam. Queen Kunti says, Tvai me ananya vishaya, matir marupate sakrit, ratamud bahatara dha gange vaugamadhanvati. Oh, Maru's Lord, he's the Lord of Maru, Marupati. Oh, Maru's Lord, please ever fill my mind with thoughts of thee, not any other kind. As Ganges torrent flows into the sea, let all my love flow constantly to thee. And Bhishma Dev has similar prayers. I don't have a poem for that, but he says one of the ones I know is, he's lying on the bed of arrows now, and Krishna is before him, so kindly, and Arjuna is there, and so many great sages, and demigods that came down. A very big event, him leaving his body. He's a Mahajan. And these prayers, after a long time, he was instructing Yudhishthira, now auspicious time of the day, he's going to depart by his own will. So then he says, one of the prayers, Tribhavana Kamanan, Tama Lavarnam, Davakata Gaudha Varambadang Dadhani, and Vapul Alaka Kurlavatana Nabjam Vijayasake, Ratchat Astume Navadya. It's the same prayer, basically, as Queen Kunti's. And he's saying, oh, my Lord is before me. He's the most attractive within the three worlds. Tribhavana Kamanam. He has a blackish complexion like a tamalchi, tamal lavanam. Ravika the gold of Arambadang Dadane Vapur. On his body, he's wearing these silken garments that are shining like the sun. Like a very brilliant yellow silken color. Vapur Alaka Kulavatana Najam. Beautiful lotus face is framed by his beautiful curly blackish hair. Vijaya Sakhe, he's the friend of the victor. Vijay is a name for Arjun. He's a friend of Arjun. Rata Rastume Navadya, let my attraction, my rati, be drawn to him and not diverted to anyone else. So this is the prayer of the Vaishnavas, and what we should focus on. And when we chant Hare Krishna, we can think like that also. Okay, so we'll resume with text 13 on Monday. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bol.